Hey guys, so we are going to be going over some basic genetic vocabulary. This is going to help you understand or just give you an overview vocabulary of what you need to know for the rest of the unit. Okay, so the first thing that I want to start with is to connect it back to some other units. So remember, this was part of our mini lesson for topic 2. We went over something called a karyotype that shows all chromosomes. Okay, so this is called a karyotype. It is something that shows all chromosomes. Remember that chromosomes are made of DNA. Alright, so or the genetic code. So this is the way that my genetic code is packaged up really nicely. So every single one of these little lines represents one chromosome. Now if I were, and we know that we look at these in pairs. So this isn't the exact replica of a human karyotype, but you get the gist. Alright, now if I were to take a pair of chromosomes and blow it up, okay, so this was pair 1 here. So remember, each line represents a chromosome. And our karyotypes are our pairs of chromosomes. Each pair, we get one from our mom, or the female, and then we get one from dad to give us a complete set. Alright, now, on every one of these chromosomes, we have lots and lots and lots of little genes. Okay, so let's say we had this particular gene for hair color. So this would be the hair color gene that the mom gave us and the hair color gene that dad gave us. Okay. Now, the way that we represent genes is actually through letters. So one gene we are going to represent with one letter. So let's say that we have dad had brown hair. So I'm going to label that with a capital B, brown hair. But our mom had red hair. Now why did I put a little b instead of an R? Well, because one gene equals one letter, and we are either going to put in a capital or a lowercase. I could have chosen any letter for this, by the way. It doesn't have to be a B. Okay, I could choose any letter. Alright, now it's very important that you understand the difference between genes and alleles. Now, alleles I brought up before. So right now we have a gene for a hair color. What we call an allele is essentially a version of a gene, aka brown hair or red hair. My version of a gene are just, in this case, versions of hair color. So I'll put example brown or red hair. My gene was hair color, my allele is brown or red. Okay, so there are a couple of different types of alleles. There are alleles that we call dominant, and there are alleles that we call recessive. You may have heard these terms before, just go with me. I'm going to keep using this example to sort of ground us and give us an example of what all of these words mean. So dominant means that the trait, like the characteristic, what you look like, is going to show if present. And we represent dominant alleles with a capital letter. So in this case, that would be my capital B. This is a dominant trait. Recessive, the trait will only show if there is no dominant present. And this is represented by a little letter. So this would be, in this case, a little b. Again, doesn't have to be b, could be literally any letter, but if it's capital, it's dominant. If it's recessive, then it's a little b. So my dad had a dominant trait of brown hair, and my mom had a recessive trait of red hair. Okay, now that we know this part, so a lot of what we talk about in this unit is going to be some differences between genotypes and phenotypes. Now, genotypes are simply the letters that represent alleles, or the versions of our gene. Example is my big B and little b. Okay. Now, there are different types of genotypes. Okay, types of genotypes. Okay, so there is a genotype that's called heterozygous. Wow, I can't spell. Heterozygous. This is a Z, by the way, I'm sorry. Heterozygous, and that means that I have one big and one little. I have a mix, so that would be like big B, little b. I have something called homozygous dominant. Now, that is when I have two big. Alright, so homo actually means the same. So I have two letters that are going to be the same. Because it says dominant, that means that I'm going to have two big or capital letters. Or big B, big B. Alright, heterozygous. Hetero actually means different. So I have a mix of one big, one little. Okay. And then finally, I have homozygous recessive. So again, homo means same. I'm going to have the same of two different letters. Recessive means little, so I'm going to have two little letters. And this is going to be, our example would be little b, little b. Okay, now, how the heck do I translate this into actually what I would look like? So this is when we start to talk about phenotype. So genotype are just letters. Those are letters that represent our different alleles. Phenotype is actually the physical trait or characteristic. Physical trait or characteristic that results from the genotype. Okay, so to figure out the phenotypes, I'm going to write the phenotypes in a different color. Okay, my phenotypes I'm going to write in blue. So my phenotype, if this is heterozygous, and I'm using this example of hair color, okay, if I have one big and one little, well, if there is even one dominant present based on my definition, then that trait is going to show. My trait being my hair color of brown hair. So my phenotype is going to be brown hair. So if this was my karyotype, that my dad has brown hair and my mom has red, and I got these two alleles on my chromosomes, then I would have brown hair. Okay. If it's homozygous dominant, well, I know that I have at least one big letter or one dominant allele, which means that my phenotype here would also be brown hair. All right, now if it's homozygous recessive, all right, I have two little b's. There is no dominant present. If, according to my definition of recessive, my trait, in this case my hair color, will show if there is no dominant present. So my phenotype in this case is going to be red hair. Alright, these were your basic definitions of what you need to know to be successful on the next part. So have fun.